This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode, I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 360 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Today is a special episode. Long-time listeners might remember I used to have a tradition of doing something a bit different every time the episode number ended in 0. Well, I've reprised that tradition for today. I'd, before we begin, like to pay my respects to the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, where I'm recording this podcast. On a beautifully clear, sunny day, I'm hoping that massive winter storms have finished up for a while. We've had a lot of soggy, muddy days down here. So, the special thing about this episode is that I am sharing my interview from the Global Travel Planning Podcast. About a month or so back, my dear friend Tracy Collins interviewed me for a new series for the Global Travel Planning Podcast. It was a super lovely conversation. It covered a lot of my favourite parts of travel, and so I asked Tracy if she would mind if I shared it in this feed as well. And I thought it also seems a very appropriate conversation to share to celebrate the huge milestone which the Thoughtful Travel Podcast hit recently. In fact, actually, it was just after my chat with Tracy. I mentioned in the interview that we were perilously close, and that milestone was reaching 1 million downloads. So thank you, everybody who's listened to 1 or 300 episodes of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. You have all helped reach that million downloads, and I was very excited to reach it. So thank you so much. So, as I said, in this chat, Tracy manages to get me talking about many of my best ever travel experiences and also what I think we can all do to travel more thoughtfully. So, I hope you enjoy it.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Global Travel Planner Podcast. This week, I'm very excited to have my friend Amanda Kendall from the Thoughtful Travel Podcast on to share her experiences and places that she's visited across the world in this new segment. So it was inspired. So I'm going to shout out to Holly Rubenstein from the Travel Diaries, who I absolutely love. I love those episodes and I love listening to them. But I kind of thought, you know what? We've all got some great stories to share, and we don't all have to be mega famous TV stars or writers or like up there that everybody has to kind of... I've listened to lots of the episodes. I thought, wow, they're fantastic. But let's just have some ordinary people like me and you on, Amanda, share our stories. So welcome.
I'm thrilled to be an ordinary person. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, you know, you're more than ordinary, but you know what I mean.
I know exactly what you mean.
So, as you were the first guest on the Global Travel Podcast all those yonks ago, episode 1, and we're now on episode 63. Can you believe it? So you're back. This is the first time you've been back. So you are the first one to do this segment. So we have 10 questions. We'll see how it goes. But first of all, just introduce yourself, Amanda. Go for it. Tell us, everybody, who you are, what you do, and about your fantastic podcast.
Oh, thank you, Tracy. And thanks for having me back. I'm Amanda Kendall. I'm an ordinary person. And I happen to love travel. And I have run the Thoughtful Travel Podcast for about 9 years now, and getting very, very close, perilously close to 1 million downloads. So I'm enjoying seeing Tracy laugh here. And anyway,
I should say you're an extraordinary person, not an ordinary person. You're going to, for the rest of my life now, I'm going to be aware of the fact that I just called Amanda Kendall an ordinary person.
I'm maybe not a normal person, but I'm not famous. So there, yes. And I just want to tell you all about my travel. So I don't know how I can condense it into these 10 questions, but I'm going to try. Thanks for having me.
Let's go on to these questions. First one. Who lit the spark for you? Who was the person or place or book or moment? At what point did you kind of go, wow, travel?
There were a few sparks, but if I kind of narrow them down, definitely my parents were kind of key sparks for 2 reasons. One, both of them had kind of, for their generation and their circumstances, done a bit of travel. So my dad had worked for the bank in Papua New Guinea for a couple of years in the 50s. So as I was growing up in the 70s and 80s, he would talk to me about Papua New Guinea. And then so it seemed like a, kind of really different to Australia and interesting. So that I had that kind of idea. And my mum, she'd grown up in a little tiny country town, and her whole desire was to get out of the country town. That's what she lived for. And in her mid teens, she took I guess now we would call it a working holiday from Western Australia. She went over on the boat to the east coast of Australia and she worked for the Ford Motor Company for a few months. And then she went a bit further and worked somewhere else. So she used to tell me stories of that. So that was their backgrounds. And then when I was 9, so 40 years ago this year, I've been celebrating it, they took me and my sister to Europe for a 6-month trip. So my dad had long service leave from the bank, and they kind of, scrimped together all their savings because they thought this was a really important thing. Turned out they were right. And we had a motorhome and travelled around Western Europe and the UK for 6 months, which was completely life-changing and completely ensured that I would always need to travel.
And of course, you've been sharing that recently on the podcast as well, and on photos. I loved some of the photos you've been sharing in the Facebook group. Can you guess where this is? And you're going closer, because there was a few guesses, and it turned out to be a caravan park near Paris.
Yes, that's right. Which you couldn't tell unless you had been there. So yeah. I know I like to be a bit tricky,
but so much fun, and it's lovely that you can trace it back. Same with myself. You go back to those childhood years, and there's parents or grandparents. There's somebody there that's going to have kind of lit that spark in that lifelong love for travel.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
The first country that you ever visited, can you remember?
Yes, so I was 9. Well, actually, I was 8. I was turned 9 during our few days there. So that was the beginning of this big trip, and it was Hong Kong. So this was 1985, and we flew, to Europe via Hong Kong, and we stopped for like 4 nights in there. So that was the very first time I had been out of Western Australia. And I guess what stood out, a few things stood out. I don't really remember doing much sort of sightseeing, but what I remember is things like there were these huge apartment buildings everywhere, because back then Perth had, I think, probably 0 apartment buildings, and we just had all these, houses on big empty blocks, going as far as the suburbs could go. So seeing apartments and people had their washing hung out like from their windows and stuff, that was just like such a new thing to me. So, and different coins, they had a coin with a hole in the middle, and all of those just little things that I suppose as a 8 or 9-year-old, that's what interrupts your norm. And so, yeah, that's what I remember the most. Yeah.
It's because up to that point, everything in your life is the norm. So then you go somewhere else that is so different. It's like, wow, you mean they don't have it's different to what I'm used to at home. It's not the same.
Exactly. And there was no internet or anything. And so anything else I'd been exposed to was, a bit of TV. And so, which was basically like, a bit of American sitcoms and a lot of British comedies. And that's about all I knew about the world by then. So.
And have you been back to Hong Kong since?
Yes. Finally, last year, I finally got back to Hong Kong. I'd been trying to get back there for years. So I took my son back to Hong Kong because now I have very good friends who had just moved there to live. So it was so much fun to go back. It was completely different to how I remembered it, but I still loved it. So yeah, now that we've got friends living there, I'd like to keep going back.
Oh, that's exciting. Now, question 3 is, what was your first real adventure? What was the first trip that you went on and went, oh, okay, this is different. This is exciting. This is unforgettable.
This was easy. So I did a fair bit of traveling before this, but this was the kind of a thing I'd really wanted to do for ages. And it was taking the Trans-Siberian train across Russia. So, I had read Paul Theroux's Riding the Iron Rooster and loved it and thought, oh, I want to sit on a train like that. I want to see, the people. And I had this opportunity. I'd been working in Japan and then had a new job at the time it was supposed to be in Prague. So we had to get to Eastern Europe somehow. And so what better way than taking the Trans-Siberian across Russia? This was 2003. 3. So it was like nice and safe to be in Russia. It was a good moment in history. And it was like that for me. Like, I'm not a physically adventurous person. I'm not going to skydive or anything like that. But to have this, like in the end, I think 3 weeks, taking the train across Russia, we'd, go for a couple of days on the train and then stop somewhere for a few days and then keep going. And it was, I have no words because it was one of the best experiences of my life.
I could just imagine it was something that we wanted to do so much, and obviously not possible now. It's one of those things that when you get the chance to kind of reach out and do it. And it began a bit of a lifelong love for travel by train as well, because you love train travel, don't you?
100%. And that was the first time I'd done any significant train travel. Oh, that's not true. Actually, the year before that, I'd been in Vietnam, and we'd taken the poorly named Reunification Express. There was nothing express about that train, but
true.
So we'd done a few overnight trips in Vietnam as well. But that Russian one, absolutely. Like, I just love long distance train travel where you can just sit. You're really immersed, and I love sleeping on a train. It like rocks me like a baby. I love it.
And what about, did you meet some interesting people along the way as well?
Yes. So I don't know if it was the timing, or also we went perhaps going from east to west, there seemed to be less tourists or whatever, but basically we were always the only non-Russians on the train. And so we'd be in a cabin of 4 beds. I was with me and my boyfriend, and so we'd usually have 2 others in there with us. And some of them were the type that they would get in, they would pull out their vodka, they would drink, and they would go to sleep. And they would not speak. So there was people like that. And on one stage there was a bunch of families in our car. There was no restaurant car, so we would all just be like sharing food and stuff. But there was a bunch of families who had been to the coast, like to the far east coast, for their annual summer holiday. They were quite wealthy Russian Moscow families, doctors and lawyers and stuff. And so they would travel like a full week on the train with these little kids, and then spend their 2 weeks at the seaside and then a week back. And I was like, this is crazy. But their kids, there was a bunch of them, maybe kind of 6 to 10 years old, who loved us, and they would try and come and practice their English sentences on us, and we'd play, chess and cards and stuff with them. It's just absolute awesome fun.
Oh, it sounds like, and it's one of those things, isn't it? We just talked about the fact that when you first go somewhere, it's the differences that you see, but after it then it's actually not. What you realise is that we're all the same.
So
we're all
true.
the same. We all enjoy the same things. The kids want to play the games. They want to interact. They want to chat. It's all that kind of humanity stuff that you just get exposed to when you travel, and you realise actually underneath it all, we're all exactly the same. We all want the same things. We all have the same hopes and dreams. And so, yeah, I bet that was an amazing experience. And you say is it 3 weeks, that trip?
Well, so if you go nonstop, it's a week, but we got off a lot of time. So, but what I would really love to do, I've dreamt of doing it, and now, who knows if I'll ever be able to, but I would actually love to go back and do just the full week without getting off, and just have that like week of, I don't know, just that, it's like a retreat almost. So, yeah.
Well, isn't it? If you could leave your social media, like your phone and stuff behind, it really would be, wouldn't it? You could really just chill out and immerse yourself with the kind of train experience and the journey, which would be amazing. And that's always the thing about train travel, isn't it? It's as much about the journey as the destination.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
Okay, so next question. I feel like I'm interrogating you, so...
Oh, I love it. It's nice to be answering instead of asking for one. So,
wow moment. Can you describe one place or experience that completely blew you away, and what made it so special?
I mean, it's very hard to narrow down. So I've managed to narrow it down just to a country. Sorry, but I that was hard. But Iceland. So I had very long wanted to go to Iceland. I had, like, in the early 2000s, I had students in Europe who'd been to Iceland. That was when I first sort of had it on the radar as a place where I could go. And I finally got there in 2015, I think. So it was kind of not super popular, as, it became a lot more popular since that time. So I didn't kind of know heaps about it, but like just the landscape of it, the massive scale of, I don't know, of nothingness, and the enormous waterfall, or of the glaciers, or I don't know. It's just seemed like such a remote and different and crazy place. So, I still loved it. Yeah, I still want to go back again.
And so what did you do when you went visit Iceland? Did you stay in Reykjavik? Did you travel around the island?
So a lot of people do the ring road route all the way around, but I had my son with me who was 5 at the time, and the amount of time we had, it would have been a lot of driving to do the whole ring road. So we went along the south coast to where the biggest glacier lagoons and stuff are, Jökulsárlón, I think it is, and then back to Reykjavik and up a little bit on the west coast as well to some very beautiful parts, and then spent a couple of days in Reykjavik as well. So I think we had must have been 11, 12 days or so there, I think, in the end. So, I didn't want to race around. So I've missed some parts. I've missed the far east and the far north, so I have to go back.
I was just about to say, it just means that you have to go back. Iceland has eluded me so far.
Oh, you have to go, Tracy. We went in the middle of summer, so it was 24 hours of daylight, and it was super weird, but kind of cool. Hard to get a 5-year-old to sleep, though.
Oh, well, I can imagine if it's daylight the entire time, it would be really difficult. It's considering I lived not too far away in the UK and I never made it over there. And of course, I guess in the last, maybe 5 or 6 years, it's become so super popular.
Yes, and it's quite expensive.
It's quite, I think, literally quite very, very expensive.
Yes.
I did look when I was in Scotland this year. I thought I could fly over, and I was like, no, I think I'll have to leave that to another trip.
Yeah.
Now. Yep. Well, so you mentioned you want to go back to Iceland, but is there a particular destination, and you can have a whole country if you want, Amanda, I'll give you that you consider like a home from home, that you just return to over and over again, or you would love to just keep going back to?
I mean, you will not be surprised if I say Japan. So, yes, it is like my home from home. So I lived there for 2 years, 20 years ago, and I've been back 5 or 6 times since. And there's lots of reasons that I love it. So the people are fascinating and lovely and kind. The food is my favorite kind of food. If you're asked if you only had to have one kind of cuisine for the rest of your life, what would it be? That would be Japanese for me, 100%. It's also such a varied country. Like each time I've gone back, I've been to a different part. It's almost like 50 countries in one. There's so many different things to experience, different kinds of history, different kinds of, it's so long and skinny. The landscape changes completely, from snowy Hokkaido down to tropical Okinawa. So there's just I feel a longing to return many more times. Put it that way.
So I know that you said you spent some time living in Japan, so we'll talk about that as well. And I know you've done some walking in Japan, which are both kind of interesting things. So we need to cover those. So how did you end up working and living in Japan?
Well, I started off the usual, the fairly stereotypical route of teaching English in Japan. So I had known a few people who'd done it already when it was less common or less popular, and you could earn a lot of money doing it. And I kind of missed that wave of becoming super rich from it. But it was enough to save a bit to send home, which was nice. And that kind of then funded a fair bit more travel. So I lived in Osaka for a couple of years teaching English. I had not taught before then, and I discovered I love teaching, and I've taught in various ways ever since. So that was a bonus. And obviously living somewhere, you get to know it in a completely different way. Every day my job was to talk to Japanese people in small groups. It's it was perfect.
It's the best way, isn't it? It's the best way to immerse yourself in a culture and learn about it. Learn about how people actually live in that culture, in that community, by becoming a member of it.
Absolutely. Yeah. I lived in a little apartment. I had, slept on a futon. I ate rice for breakfast because I quickly learnt that if I tried to eat a Western breakfast, I would go broke. So, it was just like 2 of the very, very, very best years of my life, easily. So, yeah.
And you returned not long ago to do a walk. Is that right?
Yes. So that's actually nearly 2 years ago now. It was with Walk Japan. So my friend Catherine and I got to go to northern Honshu, so a few hours north of Tokyo, not as far as Hokkaido, but the cooler climes and fairly mountainous area. And our hike was following the trail that the haiku poet Basho had walked many years ago. but it was just like, so we were walking on our own, but Walk Japan organized everything for us and gave us amazing like book of, here, walk here, turn left here, see this sign, go right, but plus all of the little like, cultural information or historical things. It's just so cool. And we stayed in, beautiful inns, very traditional inns every night, amazing food. And the scenery up there, like the mountains and stuff we were walking through was absolutely, breathtakingly divine. So that was, one of my very favorite trips ever.
And it sounds it. And have you got plans to go back to Japan in the pipeline, or is it always just hovering there?
Yeah, I don't have actual definite plans, but whatever happens, I will get back there, I am sure. So, yeah.
Okay. There's always places, isn't there, that just tug at you, that you just fall in love with, and you just go, this is a place that I know for the rest of my life I will be wanting to go back to or experience. Yeah. So what about places that are under the radar? So have you been somewhere that is a lesser known place? And obviously at the moment we're trying to kind of trying to promote a bit of the lesser known places, because there's so much over tourism and so many popular places around the world that everybody wants to go to, wants to kind of tick off on their bucket list or whatever they've got on their agenda of what they want to do. But what about some of the lesser known places that you've been to and you think, why don't people not go and visit this place?
Well, I have a real yearning to go back to the Baltic states, so Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania. And obviously, like, the capitals have become, there's a bit more fair bit more tourism there. And as I understand it, there's still a lot of, like Bucks weekends and stuff like that. But outside of the capitals, I spent, I don't know how long, maybe 6 or 8 weeks backpacking through those 3 countries a while back, and just found them so fascinating and so individually different, but as a whole kind of a really interesting block. And because there's the kind of the ex-Soviet kind of impact. When I was a kid, Estonia, Latvia and Lithuania were not on a map. And when I was, first going there to travel, I had to kind of keep practicing my head to try and remember Estonia, top, Latvia, then Lithuania. So, they're in alphabetical order. Okay, got to remember this. And
that's a cool tip. I'm remembering that one.
I just found them such fascinating countries. And I'm still surprised in general that not as many people as I expect go to Eastern Europe as a whole. So that's by far my favorite part of Europe. But I still see most people are going back to just France, Italy, Spain, Portugal, maybe Germany and sometimes Scandinavia. But I just still don't see many people going to Eastern Europe. And it's so brilliant. So, I almost don't want to tell people though to go.
Yeah, it's a bit true, because I can think of places like Croatia, which have now become incredibly popular. I think Bosnia has become popular, Albania now. So countries that were perhaps 10 years ago lesser visited or lesser known are starting to creep up. And certainly I know Croatia has now become like a hot destination. Slovenia as well, I think. Yeah. And Prague, for example, has become a problem with how many hen and buck weekends were taking place there, which I think they're banned now, hopefully.
Yes, I've lost track, but I know some cities have banned them, which makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the thing is, I think part of the problem in Europe is there's those cheap weekend breaks.
Yes, exactly.
So once those cheaper flights go in, you can end up kind of where you just got people going for a cheap weekend, cheap alcohol. And then that's what it leads to. So
it's very exploitative. I don't like it.
No, I know it isn't. It isn't good. And there are so many other places to go that you can avoid that. And most people actually want to avoid that I speak to. They're like, how can we get to some of these other places? And by train is what I say.
Yes,
some great train trips in Europe that you can take.
Fly into anywhere and you could get anywhere. It's not. It's
yes, absolutely.
All very reachable. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, I know we've talked about the fact that, both you and I have both lived and worked in numerous countries throughout the world, and that makes a difference, and it does make you feel like a local. And are probably going to be more than one destination that you're going to cover in this, but is there somewhere that you've been where you felt more like a local than a tourist? And I use the phrase tourist because I know it's a controversial one, but I always say, well, if we're traveling somewhere, generally we're there as a tourist. So
yeah.
Where have you been that you've kind of went, actually, I feel like I'm more immersed and have that more local experience?
I find this tricky to answer because I feel like it's very clear to me that it's the places where I have actually lived. But if I think about that, then where I felt more local is always where I can speak the language. So I lived in Germany for a few years, but it's not just Germany where I feel more that I can fit in. It's anywhere where I can speak German. So in Austria or to some extent, German-speaking Switzerland if they stop their crazy Swiss German, because I find that impossible to understand. But I think that, being able to speak a little bit more of the language is useful. And when I'm in Japan, although I can't speak Japanese fluently by any means, especially on that trip that we described, the hiking trip, we're in areas where there's no tourists and a lot of people didn't speak English, and definitely, I feel able to fit in more because I could speak the language. So I think for me, I also love learning languages. So for me, that's kind of that real localizing kind of thing.
I'm sure you still have many destinations that you'd like to visit around the world. I know I have, and the more I read, the more I see, the more I listen to other people talk about places, I go, oh, I really would like to go there. So is there a particular destination that is calling your name, Amanda?
Well, I mean, you're right. Many, many. So I've barely seen any of the whole continent of Africa, and I have not even been to South America at all. So those two, 100%. But the one that's really calling me, I suppose, at the moment, I keep being drawn to going to China. So last year when I was in Hong Kong, I got to just have a night. We went over the border into Shenzhen, and so literally just a night's experience. But I'd already been kind of intrigued, and that really, really whet my appetite. A friend of mine's in Shanghai at the moment. I've been following all her posts with such intrigue, and I think I want to go to China because it's a really important part of the world. And I think we have so many stereotypes about it, and we don't, I really want to, I really just want to know more. And also I think, there's lots of really interesting things to see. There's amazing landscapes, lots of reasons to go. But mostly because I just think, it's an era where we probably should know more about China, and I'd like to know that firsthand. So.
And I think you're so right with this, Amanda, because I was talking to somebody the other day about China, and it's the country that I feel that we know the least about. And I don't know why. I don't know. Why do we not know anything about China? I was watching there's a program on the UK, Race Around the World, and they actually started by going through China, and we were like, I've not heard of that place. I don't know about this. I don't know about that. And then it completely, Doug and I sat watching, and they did a lot by train. So he was like, well, we have to go because look at all these fantastic trains they've got in China. But we just don't know enough about it. So I think it's our duty to actually go and explore these places, Amanda, personally. I think that's what we need.
We must.
we must get there and then come back on the podcast and share it with everybody. And if you're listening and you've spent some time in China, get in touch because I want to talk to you. Come on the podcast and
give
share.
us some tips.
Yeah. Share where you've been and what you've done. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so you've done a lot of travel. As you say, you're 49. Are you 49 yet, or is it this year that you turned 49?
No, I'm 49 already. Yes.
Okay.
I'm in denial, so I have to check. No, I'm 49 already. I'll be 50 next year.
Oh, I passed that a while ago. The next one I've got is 60, so don't.
Okay, well, I won't complain.
Don't complain. Absolutely not. But obviously, with a lot of travel under your belt and a lot of living around the world as well, a lot of experiences, what would be the one tip that you always share? What the thing that you kind of say to people that you wish you'd known earlier or you've learnt throughout your life about travel?
Well, this is something that early on in my travels I did without thinking, and then in the middle of my travel career I did it badly, and then I relearnt it. So, and it is basically to not overplan and to leave lots of space for spontaneous experiences. So when I was a young traveler, I was a backpacker. I had weeks and weeks before I had to be, in place X, and you didn't need to book anything, and we would just decide from day to day what we would do. And, we just had this vague goal, like, we had to be in Bratislava by, I don't know, whatever, the August 10th to start work. And I had 2 months to get there. So whatever. So not very little planning involved. And then, of course, I had a child, and, traveled with then a husband and stuff and shorter trips. And I felt, especially with a child, I felt like I had to, have things booked and know where we'd be. And so I would plan a lot more. And then, of course, I realized that I hated traveling that way. And also my child became a good traveler and, very flexible. And so, from those days on, I have tried always, whenever I go somewhere, I have some things planned. And sadly, there is some more things we do need to book in advance these days. You can't go to a major city and not, if you really want to go to a particular museum or something, you often do need to book in advance or you actually will miss out. So things like that, I always check now, what do I have to book? But otherwise, I like to have some ideas or lots of ideas even, but no particular plans and just, take each day as it comes and see where we go. Because I think that leaving space often creates the gap for what become the best experiences of your trip. So that is my big thing I bang on about with anyone who will listen.
I know, and it's a great tip, honestly. I mean, we've just come back from 9 months and we made some of it up as we went along. We knew what day we needed to be back in Australia, but apart from that, we just kind of went with the flow and as you say, made sure we kind of booked some of the things we knew would definitely wanted to do. But generally, actually, this time we didn't do a lot of the kind of must-dos that people say that, you've got to do. No, actually, we'll just mosey on down and see what we feel like doing when we get there. Perfect. So it was a really good trip. Yeah. But thanks so much, Amanda, for coming on the podcast. It's always a joy to speak to you. It really is.
Thank you very much for having me. It was great fun to talk about all my favourite things. Thanks again, Tracy, for such a lovely chat. I hope you all also enjoyed listening and perhaps learnt something that you didn't know about me, even after 1 million downloads. A big thanks to Tracy for this interview, both for doing it and for letting me share it on my feed. You can find more of her episodes at globaltravelplanning.com or just, of course, search for the Global Travel Planning podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Don't forget, come along and chat in our Facebook or LinkedIn groups for Thoughtful Travellers. Sign up for my Substack newsletter at thoughtfultravel.substack.com and see some more pictures about this, some of the stories from this episode, and of course all these links in the show notes. For this episode, you can find the show notes at notaballerina.com/360. As always, thank you so much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.